Hey, good morning, everyone. This is State Representative Brad Halbrook with a very, very important special update about a very important event that's coming up on Monday night, the 2nd at 5 o'clock in Manteno, Illinois, a press conference involving the Illinois Freedom Caucus and many others, and we'll get into that just a little bit more. But I'm joined here this morning with State Representative and Chairman of the Illinois Freedom Caucus, Chris Miller, and Vice Chairman and State Representative of the Freedom Caucus, Blaine Wilhour, and additionally, Mark Glennon, co-founder of wirepoints.com. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So let's just get right into it. There's big news in Manteno, a small community between Kankakee and Chicago, Illinois, of a electrical vehicle battery manufacturing plant that's coming to the community. Mark, 2,600 jobs. What could possibly what's wrong with that? Why wouldn't we want to do something with bringing 2,600 new jobs to Manteno, Illinois?
Well, for starters, that's going to cost taxpayers $8 billion for 2,600 jobs. That's over $3 million per job, which is unheard of in the incentive industry for states trying to attract plants. Now, 536 million of that is Illinois taxpayers. Even that's unheard of. That's $200,000 per job. The average is $50,000, $60,000 in other states. The rest is a federal tax credit, a very generous tax credit that's basically like cash for $7.5 billion over 5 years. And amazingly, this is going to a Chinese company with clear links to the Chinese Communist Party. That's well established. The evidence is out there. They include, for example, a joint venture that the same company has with the Chinese military. The gentleman who was up on the stage with Pritzker at the announcement of this plant is an active member and essentially one of the branches of the Chinese Communist Party. So this is really a crazy situation we've gotten into.
Yeah. So Blaine, wow, $50,000 to $70,000 a job just on the Illinois incentives. With
200,000 to 200,000.
200,000.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, this is crazy stuff. You're a job creator, and Chris, you've hired people and put people to work. These numbers seem crazy. What's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, it is absolutely crazy. And what's even worse about it is that they're saying that this is basically somewhere around, and Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, but somewhere around a $2 billion commitment, $2 billion investment to be able to get this up and running. Why are the taxpayers giving them $8 billion? That's a boondoggle. Outside the fact that we're funding basically people that are supportive of the Chinese Communist Party, who the CCP has in their constitution. They literally have in their constitution that any business that sharing with the Chinese Communist Party, this is not good on just about every front.
Right. So, Mark, you've studied this. What is the reason that there's so many federal subsidies? Why nearly, a total between the state and federal, $8 billion for a $2 billion plant? What's the reasoning behind all that? If you can speak to that.
Well, it's part of the mislabeled Inflation Reduction Act at the federal level that was passed into law a couple of years ago, which is itself a fiasco. This particular tax credit, it's called the 45X program, was initially estimated to cost about $30 billion. And because it's so generous and people have scrambled into it to build battery plants and things, it's now estimated to cost $180 to $200 billion, which also leads to the question of whether there's not going to be a glut of batteries produced in the United States because of this. So this is fiasco, piled up on fiasco here, and it's got to be stopped. Some sanity has to be put into this.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, Mark, what other objections are being raised? What are you hearing locally? What are you hearing around the state of Illinois as far as other objections, maybe?
Well, we have a wonderful precedent because a nearly identical plant by the same company, GOTION, is proposed in Michigan. And a firestorm has erupted there. The press there has been all over it. There's very organized opposition to it. And among the other complaints there are environmental questions. The lawsuit was just filed to try to stop it for environmental reasons. This plant will consume 500,000 gallons of water a day. So there are real questions about whether the water table is sufficient in that area to solve that. What happens to the water that's excuse me, that's then discharged? The lithium is a pretty dangerous product. It burns very hot, so there's questions about whether the fire department could handle a fire in a plant like that, and they're not uncommon. It releases toxic chemicals upon a fire. So those are some of the other things that people are objecting to. And fundamentally in Manteno, they're there because they like a rural area. That's why there's overwhelming individual opposition to this. Same in the rural area in Michigan. They just don't want it. So,
yeah. Chris, are you hearing anything in your office? As people, your constituents, are they weighing in on this thing at all, or saying anything much about it?
Well, I mean, they are, and they have a lot of questions. There's more questions than there are answers. But I think one of the questions that needs to be answered is, are we for sale to the Chinese Communist Party? I mean, that's the overarching question, because they're going to throw, I mean, we've seen this over and over again. They're throwing millions and possibly billions of dollars at all of these things that have to do with EVs and windmills and batteries and solar and all this stuff. And so, you know, that's one thing needs to be answered. And another thing is that every battery from this Chinese Communist battery plant goes to feeding this that we're dealing with. We're having a climate crisis. It's a total scam. And all this narrative does is feed that idea. And every battery that comes out of that plant will help the Chinese Communist Party conquer the world. And it keeps kids in these slave labor camps mining these rare earth minerals that we all know are extremely toxic. When the landfills won't take this stuff because it's so toxic, you know that's problematic. And the bonus to all this is that my prediction is that this plant will follow the graveyard of all these batteries and electric buses and all that stuff, that will follow them to the graveyard of bankruptcy within 5 years is my prediction. You can write it down.
Good point. Hey, Mark, what's the state of Illinois? What's the officials out of the state of Illinois? What are they talking about on the Chinese connection? Are they saying anything about it?
They refuse to answer any questions. This is the most troubling part. Apparently, there was no due diligence done whatsoever on GOTION before it was selected. The questions are obvious and should be asked. Somebody should sit down, Pritzker, to ask these things. But so far, when the questions have been put to him, he simply refuses to answers only with insults that this is xenophobic or it's crazy radical Republicans that are trying to stop this. Insults only have been his answer. But why? What due diligence, if any, was done? Have the environmental questions been looked at? Aren't you concerned about the Chinese element of this? Why on earth are we paying so much for such a project like this? He refuses to answer those questions.
Yeah. Blaine, you've been sounding the warning bell in the General Assembly this spring about Chinese, or our investment in Chinese equities and the different things like that. What thoughts do you have about this silence from the governor? What's been done in the past when we bump up against things like this with foreign entities and their investment policies? What's your perspective on this?
Yeah, well, the General Assembly was more than happy to, virtue signal on the Ukrainian deal when that was just starting. We immediately divested from Russia in regards to that, and pushed a similar bill. It was basically a carbon copy of that, but we were just doing the same thing with the Chinese Communist Party, who are, Putin's a bad actor, but he looks pretty mellow compared to what Chairman Xi and the folks over in China are doing. But you know, it was very interesting. It got through committee, and I got it called on the House floor, introduced it, and they pulled it from the record. So, you know, obviously there's a lot of questions that need to be answered, you know, vis-a-vis China on this stuff. But you know, what is particularly concerning to me on this, you can expound on this. You know, Illinois is desperate for jobs. Obviously, we're desperate for jobs. We've got a regulatory environment here, you know, that's chased off most of our good industry. So, you know, anytime that anybody sees 2,600 jobs, $1 billion investment, how do we get through to our colleagues that this is dangerous? That you know, what are some of the implications? You know, some of the worst things that could happen if a deal like this with the Chinese Communist Party goes through. What are we looking at?
First, think about how contradictory our policy is on this. Pritzker supports Biden's new proposal for 400,000 work permits for some of the Venezuelans who have entered the country illegally, under the theory that there's a worker shortage. So if we have a worker shortage, why are we paying to create new jobs here? I mean, that's one good question. But on the question of the Chinese connection, this is not you folks and me making this up or some conspiracy theory. There are real experts in this stuff who are leading the charge in Michigan. They include Peter Hoekstra, 18 years in the U.S. Congress, chaired the House Intelligence Committee, former U.S. ambassador, along with Joe Sella, who was also a former U.S. ambassador, and they have outlined why, you know, clearly why all the technology that will be developed there is going to go directly to the Chinese. It's not going to be ours. There's a former intelligence official from the Obama administration who has testified that it's 100% certain that there will be some spies among those who come from China to the plant, and the management is all Chinese. There's just no question about this. This is an obligation of all Chinese companies. It's in their statutes. It's actually in the bylaws, in the Articles of Association for the parent Chinese company. So there's
it's in GOTION.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's literally in GOTION's this company that we're investing in. It's literally in their bylaws that they're in Chinese Communist Party. Is that correct?
It pledges their fealty to the Chinese Communist Party, obligates them to carry out the wishes of the Chinese Party. You know, this is unquestionable. And let me emphasize this too: the real hawks about these kinds of relationships with Chinese companies have been Democrats at the national level. They go from you know, FBI Director Wray to Defense Secretary Milley to National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Very hawkish statements. And you know, the defenders of this project say, "Well,
so it's not just the MAGA."
Yeah, no, it's not just MAGA Republicans. Hardly. The most hawkish people have been Democrats at the national level. And people point to, well, there's already billions invested here by the Chinese. That was true under the old regime, sort of, where we had this very cooperative relationship with China. But that was reset initially by Trump, but really implemented by the Biden administration. And there's an express warning, by the way, out there from the Counterintelligence Agency of the United States, warning state and local governments against this thing. Against just this kind of thing. It's about a 20-page report. And again, Illinois apparently just thumbed its nose at the instructions in that warning.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, what else can be done about this thing? I'm sorry, Blaine, go ahead.
No, I was just, you know, they thumbed their nose and they arrogantly refused to give any answers to legitimate questions on this. This is legitimate stuff, and the governor and you know, the Democrats in the state refused to answer it, and that's ridiculous. That's why we're going up to Manteno on Monday, because somebody's got to lead the charge on this.
Which, Mark, that kind of leads us into our closing question or statement here. What else can we do? What else needs to be done? What's the questions that people need to be asking going through the weekend and in the end of the week, first week, with this press conference on Monday afternoon?
Two things. Turn out for that rally. I mean, at the grassroots level, the people of Manteno apparently are very upset about this. I think they're going to be turning out in large numbers. That's wonderful. It needs to happen. At the congressional level, too, Senator Cruz, there's also has sent a letter to the Treasury Department, which has potential authority to block this deal, asking questions, saying what's going on. Similar letters have been sent by the House Special Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party. Mike Bost, our U.S. Congressman from Illinois, joined in one of those letters. We need to get that action done at the federal level. A number of demands have been put into the Treasury Department on this. And that's a squishy subject. Why they haven't acted, what, if anything, they've done to look at GOTION is a real problem, and we need to get answers there.
Yeah, exactly. Chris, do you have the details there about Monday evening? Do you have those for the press conference?
Well, I don't, but I can make it up. I know that I believe our press conference is scheduled for 5 p.m. there in Manteno, and you may have to fill in the blanks on the location because I don't
so it's going to be at the Hassett Center, Hassett Hassett Center at 211 North Main Street there in Manteno, 5 o'clock. I think nearly all of the Freedom Caucus members are going to be there. Mark, you've mentioned the former Congressman and Ambassador Peter Hoekstra. I hope I have that name pronounced right.
Yep.
Former Ambassador Joe Sella will be there, and there'll be some representatives from the Coalition for a Prosperous America also will be in attendance. And so it's vitally important to get the word out. So, yeah.
Thanks, gentlemen, for your work on this. We need to call attention to this. Illinoisans don't know what's going on here, and they're going to be very upset if they understand it fully.
Right. Well, let's just go closing comments here real quick. Chris, closing comment, and we'll go to Blaine, and then Mark, if you've got anything last to say, and then we'll wrap it up.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to jump on here today to expose this really important issue. I think one last question that we haven't really dove into is the question needs to be answered: is this a national security risk? And I think we all know what the answer is to that. But anyway, thanks again, and we will look forward to seeing you on Monday.
Excellent. Blaine.
National security should never be take a back seat to ideology, and that's what's happening right here in Illinois. We should never be in a situation where we are letting an adversary corner a market that is being extremely highly subsidized by U.S. taxpayers. Our hope is that people wake up on this and push back, and some sanity and common sense is restored. And thank you, Mark, for leading the charge on gathering all this important information and getting this out to the public.
And Mark, just real quick, I mean, is this after 18 failed attempts to lure any electrical vehicle manufacturing to the state of Illinois, this is the 19th attempt the governor's done, and it's $500 million worth of taxpayer subsidies to a Chinese communist company, a country that is our adversary. I just find this just appalling. Mark, I'll just let you make the closing comments, and then we'll be done.
That's right. I'll tell you something really heartwarming in this. It's the way that people have stood up and how they're so far ahead of understanding on this. The people of Manteno, they're going to be out there in large numbers, and the people in Michigan that are fighting this plant. We've been in constant contact with them. They've been incredibly generous, sharing their knowledge and experience, all the work they've done about the environmental issues and everything. The people in Manteno are talking to the folks in Michigan. And it's this is how things get done. This is how people stand up and end the insanity that's going on in so many ways. I mean, this needs to be replicated on topic after topic.
Excellent. Gentlemen, with that, we'll close you out, and we hope to see everyone in Manteno 5 o'clock on Monday night. You can go to IllinoisFreedomCaucus.org and find the flyer, and we'd love to see you then. Thanks, gentlemen. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.